Hi, I'm Riley with Shrewd Archery, here to tell you how to set up and use your 29mm Optum Scope. When you first receive your 29mm Optum Scope, the first thing you'll want to do is mount the scope to the ring system. To do so, you locate in one of 8 different pin positions. Every 45 degrees is where you'll be able to mount the Optum Ring System, and it's held in place with one 356 screw on top and one on the bottom. You simply take the included screws, put them into the appropriate hole, and tighten them down. You can choose to mount your ring system with or without the adjustable fiber cover on it, and it won't have an effect on the performance of the scope in any way. To remove the ring system, you just reverse the mounting process. You remove the 2 screws you installed, and then remove the ring system from the scope. At any point, if you want to change your pin position, it's the same process. You remove the 2 screws, adjust the Optum Ring System to the new pin position that you want, and reinstall the 2 screws. It doesn't take a lot of torque to tighten down those screws and make sure that that ring system is held securely in place. We recommend tightening it down so it's snug, and then give it just a little bit more to make sure it stays locked in place. Each 29mm Optum scope will come with a green level pre-installed in the scope body, and a blue and a red level in the packaging. To swap between the different color levels is a very simple process that just requires a 3/32 hex wrench. The first thing you want to do is loosen one of the screws that holds the level in place, and then completely remove the second one. With one of the screws loosened and the second removed, you can just slide the level out of the scope body, choose a different color level, and then insert that into place. To install the new level, it's just the reverse process of removing it. First, you want to reinstall the screw you completely removed, and go ahead and snug that down, and then tighten down the second screw that you loosened to begin with. You want to tighten them until you feel a little bit of tension and resistance, but you want to be sure not to over tighten them as they can crack the level. Depending on the site you'll be mounting your scope to, there's a couple methods you can use to attach your scope. Each scope is going to come with a 1032 by 2 inch buttonhead cap screw already installed, and there'll be an 1.25 and a 2.5 inch bolt in the packaging. So depending on the length of the scope rod you'll be mounting your scope to, choose the appropriate length bolt. When you mount your scope to your site utilizing the 1032 rod, you want to be sure to remove the hex nut on the outside of the scope body. By removing the hex nut, it'll open up the pocket that's machined in the side of the scope housing and allow the mating scope rod to fit into the recess of the scope body and prevent it from rotating. I'll take you through the steps to do that. First, you want to use a 3/16 hex wrench and remove the Delrin scope plug on the side of the scope housing. Doing this will give you access to the head of the 1032 bolt, which will allow you to loosen the bolt and remove the hex nut. Next, you'll use an 1/8 inch hex wrench to go inside the scope body and into the head of that 1032 bolt, where you'll loosen it. And at this point you'll see the bolt itself is unthreading, but the nut is still stuck on the side of the scope. To pop the nut out, simply put pressure against the hex wrench, and that'll push the nut out of the scope housing, and it'll be free to remove on the outside now. With the nut removed, you can now see the pocket machined in the side of the scope housing, and that's where you want the end of your scope rod to recess into to prevent the scope from rotating. We offer a variety of scope rods made specifically for certain sites. For example, we have a 1/2 inch scope rod here, and here you can see that square end that I was talking about that's going to fit into the pocket on the side of the scope body there. So what you would do is thread your scope rod on, and in this instance, when you're utilizing a scope rod that's threaded on the inside, you could use the 1.25 inch bolt to use something a little bit shorter so it's not sticking out the far side and you don't spend all day threading it on. Once the scope rod gets close to the side of the scope body, you want to orient it, in this case so the lines are facing up, and we'll go ahead and push the end of the scope rod into the pocket on the side of the scope body, and then we'll begin to tighten the bolt down using the hex wrench. Now the scope rod will seat itself into the side of the scope, and it's mounted nice and securely. At this point you want to reinstall the Delrin plug on the outside of the scope housing. And now you're all set to install your ring system and mount your scope onto your site. All 29mm Optum Ring systems are going to come with green fiber pre-installed. but there'll be blue and orange fiber in the packaging, and to swap to a new color fiber is a very straightforward process. The first thing you want to do is loosen the 632 set screw on the side of the Optum Ring System. This holds the end of the fiber in place and prevents it from pulling out and coming unwound from around the ring system. So we'll use a 16th hex wrench, and we'll just back out the set screw a couple turns. There's no need to completely remove the set screw, and that'll prevent us from losing it as well. With the set screw backed out, we can then remove the fiber from the ring system, and sometimes you want to utilize a hex wrench and push it into that 832 threaded hole to push the end of the fiber out to get it started. From there, it's just a matter of unwinding it from around the ring system until you just have it so it's coming directly out of the base of the pin. From here, we can use that 16th hex wrench again and remove the bolt that's holding the pin in place. And then you can just pull the pin along with the fiber out of the ring system. All of our fiber is going to come flared on the end so it doesn't pull through the tip of the pin. So in order to remove the fiber, we're going to cut it just behind the tip of the pin. And after you've snipped it, you can pull the fiber out of the pin and then pull the remaining piece from the tip of the pin. Next, you'll grab your new piece of fiber and insert it up through the base of the pin. So it looks like that. Then you'll take the tip and fold it over and feed it through the back side of the tip of the pin. So now you have your fiber coming up through the back of the pin and through the tip. At this point, you want to reinstall it into the ring system by sliding the fiber down through the body, positioning the pin within the groove inside the ring system, and then using the button head screw to mount the pin in place. Go ahead and tighten your pin down, making sure it's aligned properly within the groove. Now that you have the pin reinstalled with the fiber running through it, you want to begin wrapping it around in the direction of which there's a cut in the groove that allows the fiber to naturally feed into the groove, wrapping around the outside of the ring system. You'll feed it through the grooves here and through the holes. And you want to make sure you keep a little tension on the fiber to keep it tight against the base of the ring system here. When you come around the top of the ring system, you have two choices. You can choose to go through the fiber bypass hole, which will allow the fiber to go by the 832 threaded hole and out the bottom. And this will enable you to wrap the fiber around a full revolution before coming back to the threaded hole. Or you can choose to go directly into that 832 hole where you'll install a light. So if you know that you just are going to run a light kit on it and you want as short of a fiber run as possible to make sure as much light as possible gets to your pin, you can choose just to go directly into that 832 light port. In this instance, we're going to use the fiber bypass and we're going to make a full revolution around before we return to the light port. So we'll feed it through that bypass hole. You can see it's not coming out the 832 hole, but rather a smaller hole just beneath it. We'll come back around the bottom. Through the slide on the side. And then as we come over the top this time, we're going to choose to go into the 832 light port. Here's one where you want to take your 16th hex wrench and use that set screw to lock the fiber in place to prevent it from coming loose. And you don't need to really crank down on it. What I recommend is as you tighten down that set screw, just continue to push on the end of the fiber here or tap on it. And as soon as it locks in place and you can't push it back through, you know you have enough tension on it. At this point, you can trim off any excess fiber you have sticking on the light port. And then we're going to flare the end of the fiber coming out of the pin, making sure it's enlarged so you get a nice glossy surface to it so it'll have good light transmission, but it'll also ensure the fiber doesn't get pulled back through the pin. We like to flare our pins by heating up a hex wrench with a torch. We don't like to put a flame directly to the fiber as it can cause it to get stringy and an uneven finish to it. Once the hex wrench is hot, you hold it close to but not touching the end of the fiber, and you'll be able to see it flare out and just get a little bit larger. And that's what you're looking for good light transmission and to prevent the fiber from pulling back through. And that's how to change fiber in the Optum Ring System. At this point, you can put your fiber cover back on and reinstall your ring system into your scope housing. The 29mm Optum Scope was designed to be backwards compatible with most Mini-Mag sunshades and lenses. The Mini-Mag MDR will thread directly into the 29mm Optum Scope body and ring system, as well as the Mini-Mag one-step sunshade. The Mini-Mag featured two long sunshades. One was designed to thread directly into the scope body, and that is still compatible with the 29mm Optum Scope. And one of the long sunshades was designed to thread into the Mini-Mag lens housing. The lens compatible sunshade for the Mini-Mag is not compatible with the 29mm Optum Scope. But the lens housing designed for the Mini-Mag will thread into the 29mm Optum. And if you intend to use the Mini-Mag lens housing, then you'll still need to use your Mini-Mag lens compatible sunshade to thread into the Mini-Mag lens housing, which then can thread into your 29mm Optum. Similarly, all 29mm Optum accessories are compatible in the Mini-Mag, so the MDR, one-step, and long sunshade will all thread directly into the Mini-Mag scope body. Again, if you use your Mini-Mag lens housing on your Mini-Mag scope, you'll need to make sure you have the lens compatible sunshade that was designed for the Mini-Mag lens housing. If you choose to use the new 29mm Optum lens housing on the Mini-Mag scope, then any of the three 29mm Optum sunshades will be able to thread into that lens housing. In summary, all Mini-Mag lenses are compatible with the 29mm Optum Scope, and all of the sunshades, aside from the lens compatible sunshade from the Mini-Mag, are compatible with the 29mm Optum Scope. For more information on the 29mm Optum Scope, check us out at ShrewdArchery.com.